He went quiet, out of fear, out of pride, and perhaps out of not realizing what was happening inside him. He stayed silent when everything was shouting. He remained quiet when everything was falling apart. He pretended he didn't feel, that it didn't hurt, that it didn't matter. But it mattered. It always mattered. It's easy to judge someone who stays silent. What's difficult is to understand what that silence hides, what they had to lock away to keep breathing, what they ceased to be to avoid being left behind. Have you ever felt this? That nameless pain, that weighs on your chest as if it had a face, a smell, a memory. He felt it for years, but he didn't speak, not even when he had the chance, not when he heard, "Are you okay?" Not when someone's gaze almost broke him down. He smiled, changed the subject. He was strong, he was a man, he was what they taught him he needed to be, even if it slowly killed him inside. And you know what's more cruel? It's that he believed this was courage, that staying quiet was maturity, that enduring everything in silence was the right way to live. But today he knows that silence can also be cowardice, that silence can turn into a prison, and that there's a type of regret that doesn't scream, it erodes, day by day, as if each minute were a reminder. You should have spoken, you should have shown, you should have stayed. He stayed silent, but his body spoke. His reactions spoke. The impatience, the absence, the distance. Everything shouted what he tried to hide. Those who looked closely noticed, but almost no one paid attention, and the few who did gave up, because his silence seemed like disinterest, indifference, coldness. No one imagined that inside he just wanted someone to insist, to push the door open, to not walk away, but no one stayed, not even him. And now, years later, he speaks, with regret in his voice, with longing in his eyes, with guilt in his hands. He says what he should have said before. Remember what you tried to forget. Accept what you've run away from for so long. But there's no audience anymore. People have changed, they've left, they've built new stories. And he's stuck in the time when he fell silent. If this resonated with you, comment, "I needed to hear this." But time doesn't wait for anyone. Seasons change, voices change, even silence changes and becomes absence. Once, he fell silent to protect. Today, he speaks to try to regain. But you know, there are things that words can't heal. There are holes that no words can fill. There are moments that once lost don't return with tears or confessions. And now he realizes this, with the clarity of someone who was lost, with the awareness of someone who let it slip away. He wasn't bad. He wasn't cold. He just didn't know how to show it, didn't know how to ask for help, didn't know how to say, "I'm here, but I'm not okay," because he was taught to endure, not to be a burden, to solve things on his own. And he took this so seriously that he forgot that connections are built in the details, in the exchanges, in the exposed vulnerability, in the truth spoken even while trembling. He didn't realize that by staying silent he was also pushing people away. And worse, he was distancing himself from himself. He started forgetting how he felt. He got used to not saying anything, and one day he thought he had nothing left to say. But he did, and now he has too much. So many things bottled up, so much emotion choked back, so many memories begging to be heard. He remembers the days he almost spoke, the hugs he didn't give, the messages he wrote and erased, the glances that cried for help, but no one understood, or no one wanted to understand, because silence tires those who listen too, and there comes a time when the other person gives up trying, not out of malice, but out of exhaustion. And when he realized this, it was too late. Absence became routine. The names he loved no longer responded. The house became too big, his heart became too small, and regret came. Not the dramatic kind, full of scenes and shouts, but the silent regret, the one who arrives at dawn, who sits on the bed, who looks in the mirror with shame, the one who says, "Oh, you could have done it differently. You could have stayed closer. You could have spoken up earlier." But he didn't speak, and now he speaks late. Yet even late, there is still value, because even what doesn't come back teaches. Even what he lost still transforms him, and he began to talk, not to reclaim what's gone, but to not lose what still remains. He started telling stories, revealing memories he kept like wounds. He began to ask for forgiveness, not to ease the guilt, but to free the truth. And suddenly, something changed. Not outside of him, inside. He realized that silence wasn't protection. It was a shield. It was walls, it was a trench, and that no one enters where no one is invited. He hoped someone would understand him in the silence, but he didn't even understand himself there. So he broke, with humility, with pain, with honesty. He spoke everything, about everything, to everyone who would still listen, and that's when he began to rebuild himself. Word by word, scar by scar, tear by tear. It's not easy, it's not pretty, it's not quick, but it's real. And today he learned, silencing out of fear isn't wisdom, and speaking with truth, even while trembling, is courage. That's why he speaks, with a trembling voice, with wet eyes, with an exposed soul. But he speaks. He speaks because he wants to be seen. He wants to be heard. He wants for the first time to be truly understood. And even if no one else listens, he listens to himself. And that, for him, is already a beginning. Have you gone through this? Share your thoughts in the comments. And for the first time, it hurts less than he thought. Because before, when silence was a shield, every inner voice sounded like judgment. Now it sounds like truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, sets free. He still remembers the times when his heart begged to be honest, but his voice would falter, his hands would sweat, fear would say, "What if no one understands?" And he would give in. He didn't speak. He held back. He collected his pain as if afraid to burn someone with his own fire, as if his intensity was a burden others shouldn't have to carry. But this made him an island, beautiful on the outside, distant on the inside, and surrounded by misunderstood silences. You know that feeling of being in a room full of people, but feeling invisible? He felt that way, all the time. And ironically, he put himself in that place. He hid. He withdrew. He wore armor that no one dared to penetrate, not because he was too strong, but because he was impenetrable, cold, calculated, controlled. And control is a beautiful prison. It seems like balance. It seems like maturity. But oftentimes it's just fear in disguise. And he was afraid of appearing weak, of being rejected, of showing too much and then regretting it. So of giving everything and receiving nothing in return. So he gave nothing, hoping for everything. And today he realizes nothing is built in unilateral silence. Relationships need exposure. They need surrender. They need honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. The silence he chose for so long killed the chance for someone to know him completely, killed the possibility of building deep connections, and worse, it killed parts of him that never came back. And now that he speaks, he hears things he didn't want to hear. Things like, "I tried, but you never let me. I was by your side, but you seemed so distant. You were always present, but never fully." These phrases hurt more than any argument, because it's not about what was done to him. It's about what he himself prevented from happening. And it hurts even more to realize that so much would have been different if he had said just one sentence. "Stay. I just don't know how to show that I need you." But he didn't say it. He stayed silent, thinking that those who love can read minds, that those who care will insist, that those who understand even silence. But it's not really like that. Those who love also get tired. Those who care also need to be cared for. And those who understand also need to be understood. Today, he understands that. With maturity, with sadness, with that feeling of why did I take so long, but without drama, because he no longer wants to punish himself. He wants to rebuild himself. He wants to make what he lived a turning point. Not one of guilt, but of awareness. He has been talking more often. He has been looking people in the eye. He has been saying, "I'm scared," without shame. He has been saying, "Listen to me, I need to vent," without thinking it's a weakness. And you know what's interesting? The people who listen to him today are not the same ones he wanted years ago, but they are the ones he needs now. And he learned to stop forcing connections with those who didn't see him. He learned that not every silence deserves a response, and not every absence deserves an explanation. Some people have left because their cycle had already ended, and today he honors that, with respect, without resentment. He no longer wants to win anyone back. He wants to win himself back. He wants to reconnect with the version of himself that felt without fear, that spoke without rehearsing, that showed pain without fearing rejection for it. Because deep down he always wanted to be loved, but he was afraid of being known, and today he knows love that doesn't know the truth is an illusion. And the truth that cannot be spoken is a prison. So he speaks, even if it's late, even if it seems little, even if no one is waiting anymore. He speaks because he's still alive, and as long as there is breath, there is hope. He understood this on an ordinary night. Without any grand revelation, he simply sat alone in the dark. And for the first time, he listened to what he always feared to hear, his own heart. Not the sound of his chest, but that voice that whispers when everything goes silent, the one that speaks truths without shouting, that doesn't pretend, that doesn't hide. And he listened. He heard that he was tired of maintaining an image, tired of being the strong one, tired of keeping everything under control. The truth is, he just wanted to rest, but not sleep. Rest from pretending, resting from being silent, resting from having to prove all the time that everything was fine, because it never was. Only nobody noticed, or maybe nobody dared to ask deeply. He became a specialist in "I'm good," and inside, he was sinking, losing vitality, losing the ability to feel joy in the little things, even losing his taste for life. Yes, he went through this. That point where everything loses its flavor, where even achievements seem empty, where the presence of others doesn't fill the void, where even the good memories hurt because they show how much he lost himself. But he also noticed something silent, almost imperceptible, but real. The silence he built over the years was also a cry for help, a request without words, a sign that he needed to be seen, even if he didn't know how to show it. And most people didn't understand. Some distanced themselves, others judged him, few stayed. And just one person, had the courage to approach him even without being invited. It was with her that he learned to talk again. Not easily, not right away, but with commitment. She didn't require pretty words, didn't demand explanations, didn't want control. She just stayed. Stayed when he didn't know what to say, stayed when he just cried, stayed when he freaked out, stayed even when he pushed her away. And one day he asked, "Why are you still here?" And she answered, "Because I didn't come to understand you. I came to listen to you." That phrase became a key within him, as if an old lock had finally broken. And then he spoke. He spoke everything. He unleashed years of accumulated silence, shared stories that no one knew, revealed traumas he didn't even fully understand, emotionally stripped himself like never before. And there, in that entire confession, he realized the problem was never a lack of voice. It was a lack of space, because for a long time, he only found places that demanded a version, a mask, strength, posture, but never the truth. And when he found a safe space, the voice returned, the will returned, the presence returned. He relearned how to live, not that automatic living, but the living that feels, that notices, that breathes with an open chest. Today, he is a different person, not because he forgot the past, but because he made peace with it. He learned to forgive himself for having stayed silent, for having wasted moments, for having pushed people away, for having hurt with his absence even when he was there. And that forgiveness came slowly, without haste, without a manual, but it came. And with it came gratitude. Gratitude for still being alive, for still having time, for still being able to love again, with more awareness, more depth, more truth. Today he feels moved by what once went unnoticed. A glance, a gesture, a silence, now shared, not solitary. Today he speaks with more calm, listens with more presence, responds with more soul. And the most beautiful thing is that he no longer feels afraid of being who he is, with all his flaws, with all his internal chaos, with all his history of silence, because now he knows it's not the past that defines him, it's what he does with that past that builds the man he is becoming. And he is becoming a perceptible man, not in the sense of attracting attention, but in the sense of being felt. When he arrives, something changes. Not because he talks a lot, but because he conveys something real, something that doesn't come from the mouth, it comes from the heart. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone you feel has gone through something profound, yet still carries a different kind of peace. He is that kind of person now, because he dove into the abyss of his own pain and returned with wisdom, not with ready-made answers, but with the right questions. And when someone today says, "You're different," he smiles, not with vanity, but with gratitude, because he knows that this difference was born from what he barely survived, from the silence that almost killed him, from the regret that nearly destroyed him, from the pain that almost silenced him forever. But it didn't silence him. He's here, and now he speaks. This conversation doesn't end here. The next video will turn you inside out. Click and continue with me.